Hello friends, welcome to Byju's classes. In today's session, we are going to discuss about development and dependency. So two things we are going to talk about, and the focus will be on this. The focus will be on dependency theory. So in this session, we are going to understand the meaning of development. Then we will understand the linkage between development and dependency theory. What exactly is dependency theory? What it is trying to explain? What are the different dimensions of dependency theory? What are some of the perspectives of different thinkers when it comes to dependency theory? So that is what we are going to cover. Dependency theory might be something new to you. You would not have heard about it. So we'll be starting from scratch. What is the background to it and how it has come out and how it explains the concept of development and underdevelopment. This is what we are going to do. Understanding development and how dependency theory explains that development or the lack of development. So the first thing, what do we mean by development? Now, again here, there are different theories related to development. The most commonly accepted one I have mentioned here. Development refers to a sustained process of economic growth leading to increase in incomes. So the process should be having a sustained momentum. There should be continuous economic growth, which will lead to increase in income. This is the first part of development, but it has another part as well. Development should also mean that whatever increase in income has happened, whatever economic growth has happened, it should get redistributed among everyone so that there is improvement in the quality of life. So what do we mean by this? So you can see here you have two parts. First part is talking about economic growth. For example, let's say GDP or GNP. All these things should drastically increase. Per capita income, it should increase. Continuously, it should increase. But development is not just about growth. Development is much more than that. Growth should happen. But apart from growth, whatever increase in income has happened as a consequence of growth, that should get distributed among people so that people's standard of living is improving. See, if only economic growth is there, it might so happen that there is increase in inequality. So the total per capita income might have increased, the gross domestic product might have increased, but it can happen that that increase in GDP has been contributed by only one or two individuals. There can be concentration of wealth. So development means all these benefits are not concentrated among a few hands, rather it is getting distributed among different sections of the society. If it is getting distributed, that means different members of the society are getting the benefits. If they are getting the benefits, it will lead to improvement in quality of life. It will lead to improvement in quality of life. So development includes both the dimensions. It includes economic growth component, at the same time improvement in standard of life, quality of life. So development is qualitative in nature. Growth, if I'm talking only about growth, it is a quantitative term. So that way also you can say growth will always be in terms of some numbers, so GDP, GNP, per capita income. But development will include more number of factors. It's more qualitative in nature. So this is the meaning of development, and there are different theories as well, but this is the most accepted one. But one thing has been observed, that for hundreds of years, poverty and prosperity, they are concentrated in the same place. The places which were poor, now also they are poor. The places which were prosperous, now also they are prosperous. So there is this division here. The geographical north, it is generally prosperous. Geographical south, the Asian countries, the African countries, South American countries, they are not that prosperous, they are poor. So why the world structure is like this? Some countries, they have always been developed, some countries, they have always been rich, they have always been prosperous, and some countries, why they are poor. What is the reason? So different thinkers, they are trying to find out some reason why this possible scenario exists. Dependency theory is one such theory which tries to explain this, and we will come to it. What is the meaning of this theory? But this theory, it emerged around 1950s, and it became quite predominant in 1960s, 70s. And at that point of time, the prominent dependency theorists, they were focusing their research on Latin American countries. They were trying to understand the structure of the economy over there, how these economies are connected with the other advanced economies. So the focus was on Latin America. But apart from Latin America, there were other areas also which were being studied. One of the prominent economists, one of the prominent dependency theorists who studied Islamic world, dependency theory in Islamic world is Samir Ami. So on the screen you can see some of the most prominent names, some of the most prominent dependency theorists, and their main focus was on Latin America. Rolf Prebisch, Hans Singer, Paul Barron, Gunnar Myrdal, Andrew Gunther Frank, they are some of the most prominent dependency theorists. For the Islamic world, Samir Ami. So what exactly is dependency theory? Now to understand dependency theory, we need to understand what were some of the existing notions about development at that point of time. How dependency theory is different from that. Now there was this perception at that point of time, different thinkers were saying that there is a fixed path for development. All the societies will move through this fixed path. So at present, the countries which are advanced, which are industrialized, at some point of time, they were also not that advanced. The present countries which are underdeveloped, they basically represent the past of these advanced industrial countries. And these development economists, at this point of time, they were suggesting that these countries which are lagging behind, over a period of time, they will also catch up with the advanced industrialized countries. For example, W. Rostow, he talks about the same thing. He talks about the different stages of economic growth. He feels that some countries are poor because they are late in joining the process of development. So the countries who are advanced, who are over here, they were the first ones to join the process of growth and development. That is the reason they have reached here. But these countries which are not who are not doing well, who are poor, they did not join the race. But once they join the race, over a certain period of time, they will also reach here. And they are the ones who are basically representing the past of these advanced countries. And over a period of time, they are going to catch up. The interaction with the advanced industrial economies, if it is increasing, they will catch up and they will also move here. So Rostow is suggesting that these countries who are lagging behind and the countries who are at an advanced stage, they should have greater interaction. There should be greater integration between them. That way, they can easily catch up. They can move from here to here. So this was the prevailing notion at this point of time, that countries who are lagging behind, they can move up the hierarchy, provided there is integration with the advanced industrial economies. This thing is being questioned by dependency theorists. Dependency theorists, they question whether we actually have only one path here. They question whether they are actually lagging behind because the level of interaction is less, or because the interaction is such for that they are lagging behind. That is being also questioned. Rostow says, since the interaction is not that much, they have not caught up. They have not caught up with the process of advancement, process of growth and development. That is the reason they are lagging behind. But dependency theorists will question it. They will say that there is interaction. There is integration. In fact, the integration is such that it goes against the interest of the poorer countries, and that is the reason they suffer. So one of the thinkers, for example, Rolf Prebisch. Rolf Prebisch, he is a dependency theorist, and he is challenging all these development notions that was prevailing then. Rolf Prebisch, he was the director of United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and Caribbean. He says that advanced industrial economies, they continue to grow. They will always be growing. But the poorer countries, the other countries, they at a maximum, at best, can have some growth, but this growth is also uneven. So within the same country, some areas might grow, some regions might grow, some of the population might benefit, but there will be other areas which will not have any benefit. There will be other populations which will not have any benefit. So, and this is the best outcome that these other countries can expect. So, moving up the hierarchy, complete development is not happening. Only growth is happening for advanced industrial countries. And he feels that because of the uneven growth that might take place because of this kind of interaction integration that you're having, this uneven growth can even cause more problems now within the country. Some people are becoming rich, some are losing out. So again, it can lead to lack of cohesion, social tension, social conflicts. So this process of development, whatever is going on right now, is not right. It will create more problems. And he feels that this unequal relation that is there, we need to view it in terms of trade between the rich and the poor nations. For example, the rich nations, they will take raw materials from the poorer nations, and then finally they will produce something, they will make a product, and then they will sell it, they will find markets, and they will again dump it in the poorer nations. So in this process, what is happening is the poorer nations, they might not develop their own technology. They will always remain dependent on the rich nations for their products. So the equation is such that some country is dependent on the richer countries. And the richer countries are always benefiting. They're getting raw material at a cheaper price, and then they're also getting a market to sell their products. So this unequal nature of relation is the reason why the advanced industrial countries continue to grow, while the poorer nations, they will not have sufficient growth. And even if they're having it, it is for only certain sections. For example, among these poorer countries, there will be an elite section. They might benefit. There will be some areas from which resources are being extracted. They will be at loss. The resources are being extracted, but they're losing out. They will not get much benefits. So Raul Prebish is suggesting import substitution model. That means you should replace the foreign imports with your own domestic production. Rather than depending on foreign products that you're importing from outside, try to build your own capacity. Try to produce your own domestic products. So that might dismantle this unequal trade relation that they have. Raw materials are exporting and they're importing the final products. And this also became the dominant thinking at that point of time, 60s, 70s. In fact, in the 60s, it was primarily more important. But by 70s, now it is being observed that this model is also not working that properly. And then different theories are emerging, which are suggesting that maybe we have to restructure these equations. North-South dialogue is being initiated after this point of time. So this is what Raul Prebish feels about the different notions of development, why some countries are lagging behind and why some countries continue to prosper, what can be done about it. So he's giving a suggestion. Now, apart from Raul Prebish, some other thinkers have also added some more dimensions to the dependency theory. For example, Sankel, he says that dependency can be defined as an explanation of economic development of a state in terms of external factors or national development policies. So what he means to say here is there are many external factors which are influencing the national development policies, as a result of which you are dependent. So different external factors, political, cultural, economic factors, they are influencing your own national policies. As a result, you will be dependent. Your economic development will be such that you are dependent on some other advanced industrial countries. Dos Santos adds historic dimension. Dos Santos says that dependency is a historic condition which shapes a certain structure of the world economy, such that it favors some countries to the detriment of others, limits the development possibilities of the subordinate economy. So according to Dos Santos, we have created certain structures in the world economy, and these structures are such that some countries will be benefited at the cost of others. The possibility of development of the subordinate economies will be less. So you are basically decreasing the scope of development of certain economies. So this is the dimension added by Dos Santos. Marxist thinkers, they feel that dependency is an inevitable consequence of global capitalism. As capitalism is spreading throughout the world, it is going to lead to high levels of dependency. So some dimensions from some thinkers. Sankel talks about external factors. Dos Santos talks about the structure of world economy such that some are going to get the benefit, others will not get the benefit. In fact, other scope for development is also restricted. Marxist thinkers, they say that as capitalism is spreading, dependency is going to be. As capitalism is spreading, dependency is inevitable. Now what we will do, we will look at how all these things are actually panning out. How all these things take shape. So one thing here, first thing, capitalist system has imposed a high division of labor, international division of labor. For example, some countries, the advanced countries, they have high levels of technology, they have a high standard of living, For ensuring the high standard of living, you require higher wages. So those kind of jobs which do not give you very good wage, these countries will not do it. Rather, they will shift it to other economies. For example, the kind of jobs, BPO jobs. In India and other underdeveloped or developing economies, you have these kind of jobs, manufacturing, BPO jobs. They are being shifted here. So here the wages will always be less. But there, they will be taking up the high-end jobs, R&D jobs, research and development jobs. And because they're taking those specific kind of jobs, the technology will also advance, and in future they will always be at an advantage. But the kind of jobs that we take it here, underdeveloped countries, developing countries, we will always be lagging behind. So the division of labor is being ensured by capitalism, and the division of labor is such that it benefits someone at the cost of others. There is not only external dependency. External dependency means the poorer countries are dependent on the richer countries. There is also internal dependencies in poor countries. For example, within India, let's say, there are some states which are rich in mineral resources, but they are also the ones which perform the worst when it comes to different socio-economic indicators. They are the worst when it comes to the poverty rankings. For example, states like Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Jharkhand, these are the regions which are rich in mineral resources, but they do not get the benefit. So there is internal dependency within countries as well. Some dominant communities, some dominant sections, some dominant states will get benefit. These places will not get the benefit. People in these regions will not get the benefit. Another feature of dependency theory, or one of the characteristics of dependent economy, when capital comes to any developing economy, underdeveloped economy, it takes into consideration the interest of developed countries. Also, it takes into consideration the interest of the elite of the poor country. So there will be advantages to the elite sections of the country. There will be advantages to the developed country. So if elite sections are going to get the benefit, again it will lead to uneven development. And developed countries, they get the benefit. For example, for a very long period of time, we used to get different kind of aid. Aid India consortium was there. So what do we mean by aid? Money is given to you, and the rate of interest is very low. But when you are getting the money, it is not that it is completely free. There will be some sort of conditions. You never have a free lunch. And these conditions can again lead to dependency. Sometimes under aid, you might be provided some technology, but these technologies are generally the obsolete technology. So while the advanced economies will be focusing on higher technology, we will be focusing on the obsolete technology, we will be working with obsolete technology. So again, there will always be this difference. So When capital comes, the developed countries definitely get the benefit out of it, and within the country, within the same developing or underdeveloped country, there will be some elite sections who are definitely going to pocket the benefits. Not everyone will get the benefits. Another thing is our knowledge. Whatever knowledge is being created, it can also be political. Whatever prevailing policies are there, they are also given legitimacy with the help of knowledge. Cultural capital. For example, one of the feature of dependency theory, or one of the feature of these dependent system is division of labor. Rich countries should do this, poor countries should do this. Poor countries should export raw material, and rich countries should focus on high technology. Now, there were some theories which justify this thing. International division of labor. Whatever you are good at, you should do that. So international division of labor says that whatever you are good at, you should do that. So rich countries, they are better at technology, they should focus on that. Poor countries, they are good at exporting raw materials, export that. So all these things are also getting justified with the help of knowledge. They're being legitimized with the help of knowledge. And you might have observed that there are some schools, prominent schools world over. You will have economists trained in that school, and then they will come back and they will work in many of these underdeveloped developing economies, and they will again perpetuate the same policies. In India also, many of the leading economists here would have been trained outside, so they will have certain notions. So their knowledge, their ideas might be perpetuating the system of dependence. So high division of labor, internal dependency within the countries, benefit to the elite sections, benefit to the developed country, and knowledge favors the rich. Policies are legitimized with the help of knowledge. Apart from these features, what are some more characteristics of a dependent economy? Now, in a dependent economy, whatever exporting firms are there, generally they will be owned by foreigners. So the foreigners have come, they are now having the exporting firms, so they will export products out from the economy, and they are the ones who are going to pocket the profit. Now this profit will go back to the developed economy. Generally the exports are dominated by one or few commodities. So from this particular economy, these few commodities need to be exported. The export sector dominates the economy. Imports are larger in relation to the exports in the GDP. What do you mean by this? So you are exporting, but you are importing even more. So you are now dependent for your requirements on someone else. See, had the imports been less, exports more, then you are possibly making money. But now you are exporting, but more than the exports, your imports are more. So your dependence on someone else is even more. So imports are larger. Economic growth is not self-activating. It is dependent on a host of factors, specifically some of the international factors, your relationship with others. So much you are connected with outside. So economic growth is not on its own. It is not self-activating. Whatever profits are made are generally repatriated. Foreigners, they are owning the export firms. They are making the profits. They will repatriate it back. They might not invest it within the same country. If investment is not there, job creation will not be there. Redistribution of the wealth that has been made will not be there. Income, employment growth in that country, in a dependent economy, depends on multiple factors. For example, it depends on price and demand conditions of the international market. If let's say the demand goes down, if the prices fluctuate, then you will have implications. Your employment, your growth, all these things are going to get impacted. If an MNC is willing to invest or not, transnational corporation is willing to invest or not, that will also have a factor. That will also have a bearing on your national incomes, your employment creation, and your growth. Changes in prices, types of imports, they do have a bearing. If there is a lot of economic fluctuation abroad, it can impact you. If the taste fashion changes, then you might get impacted because again, your exports might get impacted. If technology creates substitutes, then your exports might be impacted. So there are a lot of things which impacts income of these developed economies, which impacts employment creation in these economies, and which impacts the growth of these economies. Generally, in these dependent economies, backward and forward linkages are not very good. Foreign actors, foreign technology, foreign capital management, all these things play a very, very important role in these kind of economies. So they have a large say in these economies. Domestic factors, domestic players are not that relevant. So all these things, all these features that we discussed, they are the ones which are characteristic of a dependent economy. So these are the characteristics of a dependent economy. Now the question is whether these dependent economy will ever become developed. Till this point of time, we have understood how some of the advanced developed economies are always getting the benefits, and these benefits might be at the cost, might be at the detriment of some of the poorer countries. But whether these poorer countries be ever able to catch up with these advanced economies. So what is the point of view of some of the dependency theorists? The dependency theorists, they reject the argument that poor countries will catch up with the advanced economies over a period of time. They are saying that these poorer countries could have caught up with these advanced countries if they had been undeveloped. But they are not undeveloped, rather they are underdeveloped. If they had been undeveloped, they would have, but they are underdeveloped. So this brings us to another point here. What is the meaning of undeveloped country? What is the meaning of underdeveloped country? Now, undeveloped is that scenario in which resources exist, but they have not been harnessed. Underdeveloped is that scenario in which resources are actively harnessed, but it is harnessed in such a way that the rich country benefits. And at present, these poorer countries that we are talking about, they are underdeveloped. They have harnesses, they have resources, and the resources are being harnessed for a very long period of time, but the way they are harnessed, it is not benefiting their own economy, rather it is benefiting someone else. If they had been undeveloped, that means they had the potential, they had the resources, it is not being harnessed by anyone, then they might have harnessed the resources and they could have got the benefit. But they are not undeveloped, rather they are underdeveloped. And dependency theorists, they are saying that as the interaction between dependent economy and this developed economy increases, as the integration increases, underdevelopment also increases drastically. The benefits, whatever increase in income is there, that does not get trickled down to the bottom. There is concentration of wealth among the elite section. And whatever other income benefits are there, it moves back to the rich country. So that is the reason they are suggesting that this entire system is such that the poorer countries are not going to get the benefits. In the underdeveloped countries, in the dependent economies, you have initiated markets. Some economists suggest that since you have initiated the markets can play a role, they can lead the role, and they can ensure the distribution of benefits. They can ensure that the benefits will trickle down to the bottom. But again, that is also not the case because in these countries, the dependent economies, the education levels, the health levels, they are not good. If education is not good, then who's going to get the jobs? If people are not educated, there will not be creation of jobs. If there is no creation of jobs, it will only lead to jobless growth. There will be economic growth, but jobs are not increasing. That means there is growth, but there is no development. Equitable distribution of resources does not take place. Standard of living is not going to improve. So, in a nutshell, dependency theorists are saying that these dependent economies are basically underdeveloped. They're not undeveloped. Underdeveloped means their resources are being harnessed, but they're harnessed in such a manner that the rich countries are going to get the benefit. And as the interaction and integration is increasing further and further, underdevelopment is increasing more and more. Trickle down effect is not there. The benefits are not getting to the bottom, and markets are also not that significant. They will also not play a significant role in ensuring a decent standard of living because jobs are not being created. Why jobs are not being created? Because education attainment levels are not good. So they offer the problem, and they also gave some solutions. For example, they're suggesting that we should go for alternate use of resources in the interest of poor in national interest. The dependency model needs to be broken down. But the problem here is, whatever they're suggesting, it is not very concrete. They're saying we should utilize it for our national interest, we should use it for the interest of the poor. But how exactly are you going to do that? That is something which they're not talking about. So this is one of the major limitation of dependency theorists. They suggested that this is something which we can explore. But how do we actually implement it? What should be the steps that we should take? That is not something which is mentioned by them. So this is about dependency theory's suggestion. How we are going to address this thing and why they are alarmed that as integration is increasing, as interaction is increasing, we are not going to improve the hierarchy, we are not going to improve our positions. Now, another specific point of view has been given by Immanuel Wallerstein. He's also a dependency theorist, and he talks about wall system analysis, also under dependency theory. So what we will do, we will look at Wallerstein's specific perspective related to dependency theory, what he's suggesting. And again, he's also giving some suggestions. We'll look at that. So what is wall system analysis as per Immanuel Wallerstein? Now, Immanuel Wallerstein says that there is no such thing as the first world, second world, third world. There is only one world. It is an integrated single system. It is a consequence of capitalist system. And we should, when we're trying to understand all these things, when we're trying to understand the dependency system, we should not focus on any one nation state. We should look at it as a system, how all these countries are connected together. So our unit of study should not be one particular state, nation state. Rather, the entire world, how it is connected, what is the linkage. That is the reason we're calling it as a system analysis. System means anything that is connected, there are interdependent parts, how there is a flow of resources across these parts, across the subsystems. So that is what we should try to do. So according to Wallerstein, the entire system, what represents an entire system? This entire system is now divided into three parts. Three strata basically. First strata is the core, second strata is semi-periphery, third is periphery. So core is one strata, periphery is another strata, in between whatever is there is semi-periphery. What he says is, there is a particular kind of linkage between all these strata, and all these three strata, they have some specific characteristics, specific features. So he tells us about these specific features, and how there's a linkage between these three strata, and because of this particular kind of linkage, how the core benefits and how the periphery is at a loss. That is what he tries to explain us. So what we will do, we'll look at the specific features of the countries who are part of core, the countries who are part of periphery. So the countries who are in the core, they will exhibit the features that you see on the screen. These are the countries which have access to raw material at cheap rates. The developed economies, they can access raw material at cheap rates. How? Because, for example, in the past, let's say 18th, 19th century, the different countries, for example, European countries, for example, England, how it had colonies at different places of the world. And because of the colonies, it could access raw material at a very cheap rate. These are also the countries which make enormous profits to FDI. They would have invested in different parts of the world and they make money out of it. Capital, the profits, they will basically fly back. They have access to cheap labor of poorer countries. They utilize the cheap labor of poorer countries. They have a massive share in the export market. So they export products and they get benefits out of it, and they're the largest exporters. They themselves have a very highly skilled labor force. And the best part here is they have not spent a lot of amount of money to create this labor force. What they will do, they will attract the best of talent from the poorer countries, from the semi-periphery countries. So the semi-periphery countries, they will be the ones who will invest in skilling these individuals. And finally, these individuals, they will move out from these countries and they will go to poor countries. For example, in case of India, we have some of the best institutions. For example, IITs, IIMs, these are the best institutions. So the government subsidizes education. But once they pass out, they might move to countries like UK or US and they will work there. So the cost of education has been borne by the taxpayers here. But the skilled labor force, they are at present, they will be placed in these four countries. So training expenses are borne by the periphery or the semi-periphery. They are also economically and militarily powerful. And if you are economically powerful, you also become politically powerful. Power is fungible. If you are powerful along one dimension, you can exert power in another dimension as well. For example, economic power. Countries like US are economically powerful. So they will use their might to influence decisions in different international forums. For example, World Bank, IMF, UN, everywhere they can influence because of the economic power they hold. So economically, politically, militarily, they are all powerful. They will specialize in particular kind of services. Information technology, finance technology, services technology. They are at the forefront of new technology. New kind of development, scientific development takes place here. For example, nanotechnology and all these developments, it will take up over there. Over a period of time, they might come to other economies, but whenever it reaches other economies, at that point of time, they will have developed something new. The core economies will have developed something new. They have a very strong state system. In periphery countries, semi-periphery countries, state might not be that strong. There will be different kind of secession movements going on. There will be different kind of rebel groups. But in core countries, the state system is very strong. They have a large tax base. And they will exercise sufficient control over peripheral countries. And they themselves remain autonomous. Peripheral countries will not be able to exert their influence on them. They will be controlling the peripheral countries rather than peripheral countries controlling them. So all these features are the features of core countries. Now, the other end, periphery countries. What are some of their characteristics? They do not have sufficient economic diversity. Mostly they will be focusing on exports. They will export certain commodities, that too one or two commodities. They are dependent on export of primary products. They are dependent on core countries. Core exploits their cheap labor. Core exports its final product. If MNCs are coming from these core countries, whatever money they will make, they will repatriate the money back to the parent country. That means the core country will again get the benefit. In periphery countries, education standards are not that good. There is massive poverty. Society is divided. It is unequal. But there will be a small upper class, the elite, who is controlling the productive resources. So if the core wants to benefit, they will tap the shoulder of the small upper class. They will give them some benefits. In return, the core country gets a benefit. At large, the entire population they might not get the benefit. As a result, there is massive poverty, there is inequality. The elites, they will get the benefit, not everyone. Infrastructure is also not that good. Tax base is quite limited. State institution is not that strong. There will be different kind of secessionist movement going on. Rebels will be there. Civil wars can be there. And these kind of economies, since the state institution is also not very strong, can be easily manipulated by the core. So they might be forced to adopt the policies which favor the core. See, upper class is also, there's a small upper class which is dominating. The core can provide the upper class some benefits, and this upper class can also influence the policies. State institutions are also not very strong, so that is also the reason why they can easily be forced into adopting policies which benefits the core. So these are some features of the periphery countries. Semi-periphery, they exist between the core and the periphery. They are the intermediate stratum. They are core to the periphery and they are periphery to the core. What do we mean by this? Now, these semi-periphery, they can exploit the peripheral countries, just like the core exploit the peripheral countries. Similarly, the core countries might exploit them as well. The core might treat them as periphery. So core can exploit them, but at the same time, the semi-periphery can exploit the periphery. So the linkage between core and semi-periphery can be similar to the linkage between core and periphery. The relationship between semi-periphery and periphery can be similar to the relationship between core and periphery. But yes, semi-periphery, it is advancing in the direction of industrialization. It is also diversifying its interests, economic interests. So these are some characteristics of core countries, semi-periphery countries, and periphery countries. Now the question is, which are the core countries, which are the semi-periphery countries, which are the periphery countries? So Wallerstein says that the composition of these countries can change. There can be some fluidity here. For example, in 16th century, the core consisted of Netherlands. They were the one who were in core. 17th, 19th century, it was the England, United Kingdom. 19th century, US and Germany, later part of 19th century. Germany also started dominating. But after World War II, it was United States. For some period of time, it was also challenged by USSR. But later, after the later part of 1980s, USSR got broken down into different smaller countries. Communism collapsed. And after that, we have seen emergence of US. Some thinkers say that US might also be losing its dominance in future. Multiple reasons can be given how it is becoming weaker over a period of time. So core country has, the composition of core has remained changed and it is also continuously evolving. Semi-periphery, countries like Brazil, South Africa, China, they will be part of semi-periphery. Periphery, countries like Chile, Salvador, they are part of semi-periphery. So these are some examples of countries which you can quote as per Wallerstein, who are either core or semi-periphery or periphery. So this is about the wall system analysis theory given by Wallerstein. Apart from Wallerstein, another important dependency theorist is Andre Gunder Frank. Andre Gunder Frank, in his work, Development of Underdevelopment, tells us that underdevelopment is the consequence of relationship between metropolitan and satellite. Instead of using terms like core and periphery, he's using other terms, metropolitan and satellite. Metropolitan, again, the core kind of countries, the developed countries, they will be referred to as metropolitan. Satellite, the poorer countries. Now, he feels that certain countries are backward, but they're not backward because of medieval traditional institutions. This is not the reason. They're not backward because they have archaic institutions, because they do not have they do not have sufficient capital, but they are underdeveloped because of the relation, the kind of hostile relation that is there, because they are more exposed to metropolitan countries. If they're more exposed, the kind of equation that is there, exploitative, it becomes even more stronger, as a result of which they remain underdeveloped. So, Andre Gunder Frank also talks about the same thing, but he uses different terminology, metropolitan and satellite. And keep this in mind, he's saying that it is not because of archaic institutions, older kind of institutions, or lack of capital, all these factors. So it is not because of medieval traditional institutions that they're lagging behind, but because of exposure to the metropolitan countries. So this is another perspective by another thinker. So this was about dependency theory. So what is the meaning of development? How dependency theories are questioning the pre-existing notions of development? What are the characteristics of a development? What are the characteristics of a dependent economy? What is the wall system analysis theory? What is Andre Gunder Frank adding to it? Now, all these things is fine, but the problem is dependency theory also has some limitations. That is the reason it has also been criticized. So what are some of the limitations of dependency theories? First thing, dependency theories, they talk about the relationship that exists between the metropolitan and the satellite, core and the periphery, and the relationship is exploitative. That is the reason the periphery or the satellite, they are always at a disadvantage. But they do not focus on the importance of nation state, the importance of national elite. What they can do? Don't they have any role to play here? Can they not improve the scenario? So all these things they are not focusing on. They are just focusing on the structure of the relations. Next thing, dependency theorists, they talk about the problems, they talk about the issues, but they are not suggesting any alternative. They're not suggesting a way out. They do not have a concrete suggestions. They do not give you a concrete suggestion. So that is again another criticism. Dependency theorists, they talk about unequal international relations, unequal relations at the international level. But there is unequal relation within the country as well. There is internal colonization. There is internal dependency. Why not fix that first rather than trying to fix international relations? Some thinkers, they have also pointed out that there are different kind of historical errors in their studies. The data that they have taken, it has different kind of glaring errors. Some thinkers point out that empirical evidences that they are providing, that is also not sufficient to support their argument. That is also criticized. In recent times, some countries, for example, countries like Southeast Asian countries like India, they have had tremendous economic growth. For example, in India, 2010, that period, we had very high levels of growth, and in fact, it has continued after that. So some countries, they're doing really well now. So in such a scenario, dependency theory has lost its validity. So according to dependency theory, if some countries are lagging behind, they are underdeveloped. They will never catch up. But some data pointers are suggesting that Southeast Asian economies and countries like India, they have done really well. So in such a scenario, there is a question whether dependency theory is valid. See, another criticism of dependency theorists is these theories are abstract and they keep on using different homogenizing categories. For example, they will use the term developed, underdeveloped, metropolitan, satellite, core, periphery, semi-periphery. Now, when I'm saying periphery, in that I'm clubbing many countries together. When I'm using the term satellite, I'm again clubbing so many countries together. But again, within these countries, there can be a lot of variation. So these homogenizing categories might not capture the variations that can exist within these economies. So on that ground also it has been criticized. Maybe they are not completely same. You have just put them, you have just clubbed them together. Another criticism is the way dependency theorists they view multinational corporation. They feel that because of multinational corporation, underdevelopment is prevailing. But again, see, because of multinational corporation, there can be some positives as well. How can you ensure transfer of technology without MNCs? MNCs have played a very significant role in ensuring technology transfer. So possibly this is the dimension that they are not taking into consideration. Apart from that, the contemporary world, it has changed a lot since the 1950s, 60s. 50s, dependency theory was emerged in 50s, became predominant in 60s and 70s. The world that we have right now is completely different from the kind of world that we had at that point of time. So dependency theory might have been very significant then, but may not be reflecting the realities of the present contemporary world. So that is also another major criticism. So all these things are some criticism of dependency theory. These theories are not focusing on the role of nation state, national elite. They are not specifically mentioning the alternatives. They do not talk about improving things within the economy, the internal dependency that exists. Many of them have glaring historical errors, sometimes the empirical evidence that they're giving that is being questioned. Some countries, they have had massive growth in recent times. The Asian economies, the tiger, they refer to as the Asian tigers, and countries like India, they have done really well. Apart from that, the homogenizing categories that we are using, it is not capturing the internal variations. The role of multinational corporations in, for example, technology transfer, all these things have not been taken into consideration. They are not given importance. Apart from that, the contemporary world is different from the time of the 70s, 60s, when dependency theory was very, very prominent. So all these things are major criticism of dependency theory. And with this, we also come to the end of this session on dependency theory. So keep this in mind, the different theories, and specifically the wall system analysis, and also the criticism. So this is from my side when it comes to dependency theory. Thank you.